What's up, comic book fans? Pete here from Comic Books Transformed, where me and my good friend over there, Brian, talk about comic book adaptations from comics into streaming shows and movies. Today, we are continuing our sort of joyous occasion of reviewing X-Men 97.
Yes.
Are you excited, Brian?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I figured they're talking about video games on this one, or they're in a video game in this one. I figured it'd be right up your alley.
Yeah. So first of all, here I want to call out the nice little details they have in the intros.
Yes.
So
yes.
the first 3 episodes, you had Jean with her hair kind of out in her little intro, and here she has the ponytail again, signifying the Madeline Pryor versus actual Jean kind of thing, which I really liked.
Right.
You don't actually see Jean in this episode.
No.
But how did you feel about this kind of split thing?
What do you mean?
Like how they split this half an hour into 2 15-minute episodes. Like it's not a very. I mean, it is a very common thing for a lot of animated shows today. Maybe aimed at younger audiences or comedies.
Yeah.
But I was not expecting it. And until I saw the title, which we had the slash in there, I didn't pick up on Motendo as quickly as I should have. But Lifedeath piqued my interest.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? Lifedeath. Like, we had some comments last week on last week's episode from John Edwards, and he was basically saying, we got to talk about comics or whatever. We got to talk about X-Men.
I didn't see any of that. I feel bad.
Yeah. John Edwards did like 2 comments on our last X-Men video, and he kind of likes older comics. Or he knows older comics maybe more than us too. I think he's like into the Chris Claremont era of X-Men.
Yeah.
This is all like Chris Claremont era stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Jubilee and Mojo stuff, no, but yeah.
Right, but
Lifedeath is Fall of the Mutants.
Okay. So what's the deal with that? See, because I feel like I know all the X-Men history just based on reading X-Men comics for like 30 years, but I can't say that I've read every single X-Men comic, and I definitely have not read the majority of Chris Claremont's run.
I read probably half of like Fall of the Mutants.
Okay.
Maybe a couple of years ago.
Okay.
When I was younger, I might have had like 2 issues of it or something like that, and I had no clue what the hell was going on.
Right.
But it's like I'm pretty sure that it's like the New Mutants part is like the Demon Bear stuff, and then the X-Men are in Dallas, and there's like and they are against the adversary, and this is where the X-Men essentially die, and then this is what puts them in the Australian outback for a while.
Okay. So recently there was this run of X-Men comics right before Krakoa, where like the X-Men like died too, or like they didn't exist basically, but it was just that mutants could live peacefully. So was that kind of like ripping that idea off?
Are you talking about that
Matthew Rosenberg, like
the Rosenberg one? So it was like X-Men came back, right?
Yeah. There was that
other reality and stuff.
Yeah,
but not everybody was there because like Cyclops and Wolverine were still here doing some stuff. Yeah, and then which seemed like it was all I don't know how they connected that to Krakoa right after because it makes no sense.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, I don't think so. Like they died, they were resurrected, and then they just hid out in Australia for a while. Like even the other X-Men who were around didn't know they were alive for a while.
Okay. So during that time, that's when they encountered the adversary. Because honestly,
no, the adversary is before. The adversary is what happens. It happens beforehand, and it causes them to get killed.
Okay, so what the fuck is the adversary?
It's kind of like a demonic entity sort of thing in the same vein as like the Shadow King and various other things.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that.
Yeah. Okay.
But this one has roots in Cheyenne Indian culture sort of thing. So that's why it's very related to Forge, and that's why the part with Forge and Storm together is very is perfect for this kind of story.
It's weird, like with the Chris Claremont 80s stuff. There's like a kind of like a black hole. Like I know the major events and like the story beats, because obviously like, we know so much about all the characters and they kind of reference things or they'll have flashbacks to things. But there's all this stuff with like demons and like Native American mythology from this time period. Yeah, it's like a big deal, like all the Inferno stuff, and that's what they're like focusing on with this cartoon.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's interesting that most of these stories are like 80s stories, which is really cool.
Right. So you asked me, you started off the episode saying like, well, what did I think of this? I thought that the storm part of the episode was like very, like I was intrigued by it and I enjoyed it. I felt like it was sort of more mature and adult. And the Jubilee one, it kind of felt like filler, but it was fun to see all the video game references. And I just like Mojo from the cartoon, from the original cartoon.
Yeah.
You know? So what did you think? How did you feel about that?
Yeah, it was a weird thing to do, but I think the weirdest thing too is that I don't think that we get the other half of Lifedeath until the 6th episode.
No,
I wasn't looking up the episode titles for this previously, but I'm pretty sure we skip an episode. So it's just interesting to have a such a serialized show split it like that. And you're right, the Jubilee show felt more like a fillery kind of thing, but there are a lot of nice little nods there to the old show and the video games that are, you know, probably a good half of the reason why I was so interested in X-Men as a kid. Yeah, I guess if I had to say like something was my least interesting part or something, I would probably say that half of this episode.
Sure.
And I can also understand why you wouldn't just do the Storm thing all in one shot, because then it's just literally Storm and Forge the whole time, and you wouldn't see any of the characters, I guess. So
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was thinking that like if you just had the Jubilee arcade episode, but maybe like fleshed it out a little bit more, had some more like Mojo World stuff, or they went to specific time periods in the X-Men history, like it would just sort of seem like a filler episode entirely.
Yeah.
And if you did just the Storm one, it'd be this great like focused Storm episode and serious episode, but it would seem like a kind of a departure from all the rest of the stuff going on.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So I do like Roberto kind of becoming a bigger player in this Jubilee story, literally and figuratively, right? You know, one of my favorite things in X-Men Red was when he was interacting with Magneto and he was calling Magneto Headmaster.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like right now we're seeing that time when Magneto literally is the headmaster.
Yep. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
although they really haven't explained why he's there, I guess. Because like the first episode makes it seem like he's going back to where he was doing, and then like they never show him coming back.
Right. That's a good point.
He was in the last episode is hanging out in Jubilee's room too.
Yeah. It's funny because like he's just like they just accept that Magneto's on the team. Like on the old show, you'd have at least like one scene where Wolverine would walk by and be like, "I don't trust this guy," or something. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he would say something, you know. But like Magneto's just sitting there like having coffee with them in the beginning of this episode. Yeah. It's funny because you know I already said this to you in our chat, but like Beast is like really evil in the X-Force and Wolverine comics right now. Yes. So it's like weird to have this sequence where like Wolverine comes in and he's like, "What's this Rogaine pile doing over here?" And like
it's just I love the Rogaine reference too.
Yes,
90s thing.
Yeah. But then like Beast is like making him coffee. I'm like, "Don't drink that, Wolverine." And then like Magneto's like, "I make my own coffee." And like, what the hell's going on? You know. But as far as that is weird, I don't think anything is as weird as Skinny Mojo.
Yeah, that was real creepy looking. Yeah, I mean, it was a funny gag, but I felt a lot better later on when he was like big fat Mojo again. I think that was just a digital representation there at that point, but that looked a lot more normal to me.
Yeah, it almost seemed like he got powered up once the viewers like really engaged in the show or the video game.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a commentary on video games now, wouldn't you think? Like with like people watching people play.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I saw some like Instagram reel or TikTok where it's just, like our generation like played video games or millennials played video games, and actually we are millennials,
We are.
and then the Gen Z watches people play video games, and there's this whole thing like the next area is going to be people watching people play video games. People watching people who are watching people play video games.
Oh God,
the whole dumb thing. So
you're probably right. Oh,
yeah,
God.
so it is a pretty good piece of commentary there. And even today, like my son is on spring break, and he's like, "I'm bored." I'm like, "You have like 100 games at your fingertips here that you've never touched. We have Xbox Game Pass. Go find something to do." And
yes,
and no, he'd rather watch YouTube and people doing dumb things.
Yeah. Kids are just totally different. If they can only be as cool as us kids from the 90s and our X-Men arcade game.
Yes.
So like Mojo like literally fucking comes out of the arcade. It's just like that Madeline Pryor episode where like the monster comes out of the screen. He comes out of the screen too at one point.
Yep.
Yeah. But what I was trying to remember, the way that they simulate the arcade and like they have Jubilee as an arcade character and then Roberto is an arcade character. To me, they looked more like the Ninja Turtles arcade versus the X-Men arcade.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if I had to pick my favorite arcade game, of course, it's the X-Men arcade game, which is heavily inspired by that Pride of the X-Men pilot.
Yes,
and all that. But that's my game. And yeah, it did look a little more like Turtles, but you get the point. I also really appreciated that the system that appears in Jubilee's room very much looks like a Genesis, and that cartridge was 100% the first X-Men game on Genesis. It was awesome.
Yes, it sure was. I still remember the song from that, like, because the X-Men theme song of the cartoon, of course, is iconic. But I remember that dun 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 dun. Yeah. I remember that fucking X-Men game. That was so good.
Very hard game. Actually, wait, can we talk about the Mojo level? You remember the Mojo level?
No, I don't actually. I don't remember distinct levels.
I got to the Mojo level, I think, once ever. So there's a point where I think it's like the 4th or 5th level or something like that. There's a point where you have to actually press the reset button on the Genesis in order to advance the game.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's crazy. My mind was blown when I read that.
That is.
I never actually got to do it because the game was so freaking hard.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah. But also Genesis reset buttons were known to be a little fiddly. So you could be risking your entire playthrough on a bad button on your system.
Whoa, that's daring. Jesus Christ. See, kids don't know what they were missing out on, man. That's fucking epic right there.
Yeah.
It's like some kind of Matrix level shit. You got to like reset the system to continue the adventure.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite little gaming like oddities out there.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that. That's crazy. But then everything is like a little meta commentary, a little meta joke in this. And at one point, there is this other character who I kind of thought was maybe going to be Dazzler or like
the costume very much like Dazzler.
Right. And then I was like, is it like a gender swapped Mojo? I mean, not Mojo, Long Shot. I was like, what is this? You know? And then it was just like Jubilee, but essentially like they had programs of her and this program just lived a long time.
Yeah. So essentially she was like a beta test of for this game that somehow escaped being deleted with all the others. And the cool thing here is that how do you pronounce that? Abyssa?
I guess, yeah.
I guess. The cool thing is that Abyssa is voiced by the original Jubilee actress, Allison Court, which is really cool.
Oh, I did not know that. Dude, you're teaching me so much today with the X-Men game, with this. Yeah. That's freaking awesome. Okay. And she's other characters on the show too, right?
She does play someone else. I don't remember who.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I thought that there would be like a moment when like the game would shut down and Jubilee would like say goodbye to her and it'd be like maybe like Tron or something where she'd like disappear. But she just kind of disappears once they defeat Mojo.
Exactly. You actually see her disintegrate right before Mojo does. So she's kind of like, oh man.
Yeah, exactly. But like, you know, Spiral sends him back to Earth. And then we get this sequence where like Jubilee's on her bed with Roberto. Did you think they were going to kiss?
Oh, yeah. They've been hinting to that. Like we said in the first episode, the show is very horny. Like,
yes.
Of everybody.
Yes.
Essentially here. So the Jubilee and Roberto are definitely paired off here.
Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned how horny the show is. First off, they kiss, and it's not just like they kiss and it's the next scene. It's like they kiss and they do Jubilee's fireworks, and then you see them actually kind of lean over onto the bed too.
Yeah.
You know? Right.
And this is her 18th birthday, so you know.
Oh my God, Jesus! Oh my God, he's gonna.
You know what's funny too? I as I mentioned earlier, I've been rewatching. Oh no, I think I mentioned this in the other video. I've been kind of rewatching the original series alongside this.
Yeah.
And I just watched an episode today that was it was a very Jubilee centric episode with Mojo and Longshot. And you know, like she has like in the background, you also saw a little Longshot doll in her room.
Yep.
And she actually mentions that she makes a joke that because she seems to be a little infatuated with Longshot. And she says like, "Oh, I'm 17. I mean, I'm 15. I mean 17." Right. So I really like how they kept the ages really accurate here.
Yes, that's freaking awesome. Okay, yeah. So I mean, like that episode probably wasn't as horny as this episode, though.
Oh no, that it was because that was okay. This is another thing I learned today about the show. So I was in and out of the show at various points because you know we couldn't. We didn't have DVRs or on demand or anything back then. So just like you missed it on Saturday, you didn't see it.
It's gone.
And there's reruns and all that. Yeah, but sometimes it's impossible to find certain episodes. So I learned that when I was watching, I watched the Phoenix Saga.
Yeah.
And the episode that comes on after that on Disney Plus is chronologically the correct episode. So it's like Cyclops goes back to his like orphanage where he grew up. And the fucking Purple Man is there. I had no idea that the Purple Man was in this show at all.
Right.
This episode didn't actually air until the 5th season because there were animation problems. So there were 3 episodes in season 3 that got pushed to season 5, and then 3 episodes from season 4 got brought up.
Okay.
To season 3 in the airing order. So like when you first watched it, like Jean came back, but you didn't really know how or why.
Yeah.
It was buried in one of those other episodes. So this long shot episode was technically supposed to be in season 3, but it has the season 5 animation, which is really bad.
Oh yeah. There was a dip in quality in that season 5. I do remember as a kid kind of being confused with the Jean thing because it didn't seem to like chronologically make sense. And now the way you explained it, it's like, okay, well, of course it didn't make sense.
Yeah. So I saw. And even one of the episodes, like I thought I saw a lot more of season 4 than I did. Like I definitely remember seeing the stuff on Asteroid M. That's a season 4 episode, and probably some other stuff. But like the Nightcrawler episode, that's actually in season 4, not 3. But I remember seeing that earlier on.
Right, I remember that episode too. Yeah.
So yeah, there was a bit of jumbling in the old show there, which I found interesting. And then the next episode I watched was with the Iceman episode. And then also is interesting because that those 2 episodes are back to back, and then we have a Jubilee Mojo episode, and then we have an episode with Forge, who was also in the Iceman episode with X Factor.
Oh, okay, look at that. I wonder if they're doing that intentionally.
Yeah, because if you remember, I don't know if you saw in the background there that Forge has like a poster of that X Factor team on the wall.
Okay. So that opens up a whole nother can of worms. So in that X Factor episode, because I do remember seeing that as a kid, there's one part where like Cyclops and Havoc are like blasting each other, and it's that whole thing where like they can't hurt each other because they're like connected or whatever. The idea is that they don't know each other, though.
Yeah, they don't know each other, and Cyclops has also met Corsair, and he has no idea that he's his dad. Great.
Oh shit! Okay, but in those episodes, is it implied that because I remember that Iceman's in that episode and X Factor shows up, but is it implied that Iceman was a student at the school?
Yes, Iceman was an original X-Man, and this whole thing where he was kind of like a renegade sort of person and didn't want to follow the rules and wanted to do his own thing. It was a little mischievous.
Yeah.
Not like a bad boy like Wolverine or Gambit is sort of on the show, but just a little more just wants to be his own person.
Okay.
So yeah, they imply that he and Lorna were X-Men, and then they kind of ran off, and then she faked her own disappearance because she didn't want Bobby to like stop her or something, which is so weird. And she goes off and joins X Factor.
Okay. So like Polaris. Yeah, I think that there has been mention of like him and Polaris having a thing in the comics
Yeah, yeah, they did everything in the comics.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, like we do see X Factor, like you said, in a picture that they show multiple times in this episode.
Yeah.
And then Forge, we also okay, there's a couple of references from Forge. There's one part where Storm realizes that Forge was kind of essentially part of the thing that made her lose her powers, right?
Yes.
Because like he helped develop the inhibitor collars, and he mentions a scientist from Scotland, and so I'm assuming that that's Moira McTaggart.
See, I'm not sure because you also got to think that Apocalypse was masquerading as what the hell is the name?
That guy looked like Albert Einstein.
Yes, he looked like Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
So it could have been either one of those.
Yeah, his name was probably like fucking like Dr. Stein or something too.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe it was Apocalypse, which Apocalypse and his motivations are kind of muddy with this show. But what do you call it? So he helped make these inhibitor collars. He kind of came up with the idea, then the scientists like ran with it, and then the government uses it now. And they throw in a little bit of commentary there, like Storm says something like, "Don't you know you should not trust the men from Washington," or something like that. She says something like that. I'm like, oh, the January 6th stuff last time, and then you have Storm saying that this time. But then besides that, we see the X Factor picture. He mentions the scientist from Scotland. And then I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. He mentions a war, but it's not like he's from the future.
No, he's not from the future.
Right. The Forge that we see with Bishop and stuff is just the future of this Forge.
It's an older Forge, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I really dug the episode. I like that Storm basically was like, screw you, and she wanted to leave him. And Forge and Storm were like an item in the comic for a little while, too.
Yeah, and that was all during the period where Storm didn't have her powers, and he was trying to help her get him back.
Yeah, he literally says, "I love you" in this episode.
Yeah, that was a little forward.
Yeah.
There was a couple points where I thought that there was this seemed like a simulation, because there was a point when they were on the horses, and she says like, "Oh, I've seen that owl circle by, and the breeze always goes one way." Yeah, and I guess that's something to do with the adversary there, or something like that. But it was really weird that Forge said, "I love you."
Yeah,
because they just met here.
Yeah.
They didn't imply any extreme passages of time, so I mean, it's either a simulation or something else, or they just didn't show us how much time has actually passed.
I'm thinking that some time has passed and stuff,
Yeah.
But no, I dug that whole sequence, and I guess I could wait till episode 6 to see more of it. I think it's so funny that like my blind spot for X-Men comics, the comics I literally haven't read, are like the Chris Claremont stuff, the things that so many people like around our age are like, that's the only X-Men. Everything else is fake, And I've just read everything else.
You got to think about this. Yeah. We were less than 10 years old when that stuff was out.
Right.
Yeah. It wasn't. I didn't have income. I mean, I barely had an allowance. So and when I bought comics, it was just like I went to the newsstand. I was like, "Oh, that looks cool. I'll buy that." So I had like an issue here, an issue there of various things, but I didn't have a complete story completed until probably like the late 90s.
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Like for me, and this is a reference for anyone that watches our show. Like I've pretty much started with X-Men when like you had the blue and the gold team, and it's like right after Magneto attacks him at the X Mansion for like X-Men #1. And I mean, that's when everyone was reading X-Men.
Best selling comic book of all time, still to this day.
Yeah. And then you have the whole sequence where like Bishop thinks that Gambit's the traitor. And there's all this stuff. They go and they like team up with Ghost Rider for a little bit, and they go to like Louisiana, and they're with the Thieves Guild with Gambit. Like that's pretty much like I've read like everything since then. I'm sure there's gaps, but I've read like pretty much all the stuff since then.
Yep.
So anyway, is there anything else you want to say about these episodes? This one episode.
No, I'm loving the show. I think we're eating pretty good right now with the Invincible ending here and X-Men.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going.
Hell yeah. So guys, Brian mentioned that we might consider watching Fallout or reviewing it. We're going to see if it's good or not. And then that could be our other thing that we review. But for now on, we're still covering X-Men 97 for the next few weeks.
Yep.
So if you guys have not subscribed already, please do. And, we always love to hear what you guys think. John Edwards, thanks for the comments last time.